Polity in the previous lectures, and we have started with class 10th, chapter 1. We were done with one part, and today we are going to do the second part of it, and we'll be done with the first chapter. So before I start the lecture, can you just confirm if I'm audible and visible to all of you? Yes. Yes, Manoj, good evening. Ashish, good evening. Yes. Am I audible to everyone? Audible and visible? Because, good evening, yes. What is your name actually? Alright, so we'll start with the second part. In the previous lecture, we actually saw what exactly was important in this chapter. This chapter is about power sharing. We saw why power sharing is important. We saw how it can be shared among different groups, different political parties, between center and state. We saw all of that. But this chapter actually talks about all these things by telling you two stories, story of Sri Lanka and story of Belgium. So we didn't see the stories in the previous lecture because I thought I'll give you the basic foundation first. Now we'll see what the story is all about, and then we will go through the rest of the part again, what we have already studied in the last class. Yes. Okay. You're from Ladakh. All right, great. Welcome to the session. Let's start. All right. So in the previous lecture, we saw why power sharing is important. Before that, we saw a few definitions, key definitions in this chapter. For example, what is an ethnic group? We have already seen that. Ethnic group is based on social division on shared culture. We have seen that, right? Then we saw what is civil war, what is majoritarianism, and prudential. What is the meaning of prudential? Prudential reason is something which has good judgment, wise judgment, practical reasons, something for practical reasons. So we've already seen all of that in the previous lecture. And we also saw why it is important to share power. Okay, before I go ahead, you tell me, why is it important to share power, and where are the rest of you? Right. Okay, Sujal Pandey, welcome to the session. Why is it important to share power? That's what we studied in the last class. You have to answer this question. And then I will talk about Sri Lanka and Belgium and the story that is given in this chapter by which they have tried to explain why it is important to share power. Okay. All right, so let's start with Sri Lanka first. In the meantime, you can answer in the comment section. I think the comment section is stuck in my phone. 1 second. Yes, now I can see it. All right, so I'll start with the chapter. In the meantime, you answer in the comment section why power sharing is important, why it is stressed so much. Okay, so there is one example given of Sri Lanka. Now, Sri Lanka is an island nation, right? We already know about Sri Lanka. It is an island nation near Tamil Nadu. You must have seen in the geography, in the map. You must have studied in geography. Now, the population of Sri Lanka was very diverse, extremely diverse. Why? There are 74% Sinhala speakers, which are the majority speakers, then 18% Tamil speakers. And out of these 18% also, 13% were Sri Lankan Tamils, and the rest of them were Indian Tamils. So this is the diversity which is there in Sri Lanka. Now, what happened is, I'll also talk about the population a little bit first. Yes, to prevent the concentration of power. Very good. So most of the Sinhalese, they actually they were Buddhist. So this was the majority religion, right? Major religion, Buddhist. Most Tamils were Hindus or Muslims. They are Hindus or Muslims. And around 7% Christian belong to both the communities. Now, what do we understand by all of these? We see that there are diverse people who speak different languages. They live together here, right? Now, whenever there is diversity, diversity, that can lead to differences if it is not handled well. If one group feels like they do not have power, or if one group feels exploited, or they feel that they are being taken advantage of, in that case, conflicts can always arise. And that's exactly what happened in Sri Lanka as well. Yes, very good. To reduce conflict, very good, yes. So, Sri Lankan Tamils, they are mainly concentrated in the northern and eastern part of the country. And in this chapter, we see how the numerical majority can create a problem if everybody is not taken into account while sharing power. So, in Sri Lanka became independent in 1948. Now see, this is not very important for your examination point of view, not the becoming independent part, the story part. The story is just to make you understand what we have studied so far. So Sri Lanka became independent in 1948, and the Sinhala's leaders, they tried to establish political dominance, of course, because we have seen these were the majority, these were in majority. So they thought, all right, we are in majority, we are going to establish power. Now say they tried to establish political dominance through a lot of policies. There were different policies that came into account. Now in India, if you see, we have fundamental rights, we have policies for both majority generation, majority population, and the minority population as well. We have seen in the fundamental rights how we have given specific protection to minorities as well. But here that did not happen. They brought about policies, but they were a series of majoritarian policy. So for example, 1956, Sinhala was declared the only official language. It was the only official language because most of the people spoke this language. Then preferential treatment was given to these applicants in government jobs also. And what does it mean? This means that they were given preference in government jobs, in government universities. Then constitution also directed that state to protect and promote Buddhism, because we saw that most of these speakers were Buddhist. So majority of them were Buddhist. So we know that the language Sinhala was the majority language and the religion Buddhism was the majority religion. So both of them were given preferences here. Now we see that this is majoritarian policy because they did not take into account the minorities, right? And that is going to create problem. Yes, hello, good evening. Please focus on the class. I'll take your questions after some time. So these measures, now what will that do? Whenever you feel like you live in, for example, you live in a family, right? And you have there are two more siblings apart from you, and you see that those two are given preferential treatment. What would you feel? You will feel alienated, you will feel separated, you will feel like you're not a part of the family. So because of these majoritarian policies, the rest of the people, the Tamil community, they felt alienated. Their language and culture was ignored. They were not given preference in government colleges and government jobs. Similarly, they faced discrimination in other areas of life. They were not given equal political rights. Because of all these measures, they were alienated. They felt alienated. Now, what will happen if somebody feels alienated? So, in the same example, the family, when the child feels ignored, the child will start acting out, right? They will create problems or they'll start fighting. That is called acting out. The same thing happened here as well, and it is very obvious. So, because these were ignored and discriminated against, they demanded recognition of Tamil as official language. These were the genuine demands up until now, that if you have recognized your language as the official language, and up until now you have given only that language the official language status, why not give Tamil also the recognition? Because there are people who speak Tamil. Then regional autonomy, they started asking for, okay, this is our area and we don't want to be a part of your area. This should be in our hands because you are making policies which benefit you, not us. Similarly, equal opportunities in job and education. And these demands, what do you think? Would they be easily accepted? If they wanted to accept such demands, they would not have made such policies in the first place. They would not have made majoritarian policy in the first place. But the very fact that they made majoritarian policy show that they didn't really care much about the rest of the people. So obviously they demanded, Tamils demanded, but their demand was repeatedly rejected. And by 1980s, several Tamil organizations demanded an independent state. Of course, that's what will happen. They'll ask for their rights. If they don't get their right, they'll say, oh, we want to separate now. That's what happens, right? And because of this, because of these conflicts and tensions, that this kept continuing. This became a civil war sort of a situation, and it kept continuing until very later. It resulted in a lot of deaths, refugee crisis, economic, social losses, then damage to country's cultural life, and this civil war finally ended in 2009. So you see, because power was not shared here, it created civil war and it created a lot of loss of life and property as well, of the culture as well. This happened because power was not shared among the two major communities which were there. One major community, other minor community. Yes, good evening, Prince Tripathi, and the rest of you. If there are some new students here, let me make this announcement. This class usually happens at 6 p.m. Actually, it happens at 6 p.m. only every day from Monday to Friday. and it is never late, so please do not be late in the class. I will start the class sharp at 6:01 unless there is some technical emergency or technical issue. This class will not be delayed. So please be on time in the class. Okay, next. So we saw one example of Sri Lanka where we see that because the power was not shared equally, or the power was not shared among different groups, it created civil war. It created conflicts, it created crisis, it created economic and cultural problems, right? Next, we have the example of Belgium. Now, what is the example of Belgium? Now, Belgium is a small country, we know that, but its composition, it's a very small country, but its composition is very complex. How is that so? I'll tell you. Okay, before we move ahead, tell me which is the capital of Belgium. Which is the capital of Belgium? So this is a small country where 59% of the population lives in Flemish region. 59% lived in Flemish region and they spoke Dutch. This is 59%, right? And the rest, 40% lived in Wallonia region and they spoke French. And 1% spoke German. So there are majorly two different groups. One is that lives in Flemish region and the group speaks Dutch. They are 59% majority population. The other lives in Wallonia, that is 40%, and they speak French, and 1%, approximately 1%, they speak German. This is in general in the country. It's a small country. This is in general in the country. But in the capital city, this percentage is the opposite. How? 80% spoke French just in the capital city, not in the entire country. In the capital city, 80% spoke French, whereas in the entire country, only 40% spoke French and 59% spoke Dutch. So in the capital city, 80% spoke French and only 20% spoke Dutch. Now you see how complex it is, that if we talk about the entire country on large, majority population speaks French, Dutch, and the 40% approximately speaks French. Whereas in the capital city, it is the opposite. 80% speaks French and 20% speaks Dutch. I hope it is clear until now. Now, the French speaking minority, why are we calling it minority? Because overall, if you look at the country, overall in the country, only 40% people speak French. So the French speaking minority, they had very rich history and they were politically more powerful. So minority here is more powerful, okay? This caused tensions. Now, of course, as I told you, whenever one group has more power than the other, it will always cause conflicts or tensions. So it caused tension between Dutch speaking people, Dutch speaking majority population and French speaking minority population. Now what happened? Because, and especially this is a problem because in overall country, the percentage of majority and minority speaking are different, whereas in the capital city is different, completely opposite. So this created a very complex web sort of a situation. How did they tackle it? Now to tackle it, it is called Belgian model. They adopted 4 features. Very important. Please be careful now, otherwise you will not understand. Yes, very good, solitary strategist, Raj Mahesh. Yes, exactly. Okay, so now they came up with 4 different features. The first feature was equal representation in the central government. Now we know there is a central government and there is in the capital city. In capital city, the number of people who speak French and Dutch is completely opposite to the overall country, right? So in the central government, what they did is they will give equal representation to both language, right? Whether they are Dutch speaking people or there are French speaking people, the number will be equal. That's one thing. Number of ministers is going to be equal. Second, certain laws required support from members of both linguistic groups. So they made laws for which the support of both the members will be required. Both the groups will be required. So both of them given precedence, right? Both of them were given power. And no community can make decision unilaterally, meaning whether you are majority or minority does not matter. You cannot make the decision yourself. The other group has to be taken into account. So we see here what they've done is they have distributed the power. Next, strong regional government. So central government had powers, and apart from that, they transferred some of the power to the state government also, the regions also. And they made sure that the state was not subordinate to the central government. Both had equal powers, both had good powers. Next, third thing they did was special arrangement for the capital city. right? Why? Because in general country, we have seen the composition of French and Dutch speaking people were different, and in the capital city it was different. So for capital city, they came up with another arrangement where they said they can have their own government, both communities will again enjoy equal representation, and French speaking community accepted equality, and here Dutch speaking community accepted equality at the center. So on the country level, where Dutch speaking people were more and French speaking people were less, both of them accepted that they are equal. Similarly, at the capital city level, where the French speaking people were more and Dutch were less, again both of the communities, both of the language groups, they accepted that both are equal. So what they did was, they are simply distributing power. If you can see, this is an example of power distribution. And finally, community government. Belgium created a third level of government elected separately by Dutch, French and German speaking communities, which deals with different matters, for example, cultural matter, educational matter and language related matter. Now see, even though in Belgium the composition was very complex, but they came up with an arrangement where they would distribute the power, where they will divide the power, and because of this they can live peacefully here. Whereas in Sri Lanka, it was not that complex. The composition was not that complex, but they were not ready to share power, which created civil war like situation, which created civil war for long years, for a lot of years. Now that's what they have explained here, that if you want peace, if you want every community to thrive, power sharing is important so that power doesn't get concentrated in few hands, right? So what are the lessons we learned from Belgium and Sri Lanka? The two countries adopted very different approaches to power sharing. We have seen that in Belgium, they recognize the national unity depends on respecting everyone. So it depends on respecting the diverse community, whereas in Sri Lanka tried to dominate the other community, which led to civil war, right? So we see that power sharing is important, and this is something that has been explained to you using two different examples. Now, for your exam point of view, this story may not be very important, but by the end of this lecture, I'll give you a mains answer writing question where you'll have to use these stories, a little bit of them, not the entire story, but you'll have to use these stories to answer the question. Okay, do you have any questions? We will move ahead, but do you have any questions? Ma'am, if the power is shared among all people or group, then the decision making and policies that are for any special group religion will be delayed. Then any way which it can, I did not, oh, so you're trying to say that we have shared power equally, and which means if there are special arrangement required for minority communities, for example, then the decision will be delayed. See, when we say sharing power does not mean that the decision will be delayed completely, because in our constitution, if you see, we have made fundamental rights to protect them. So power is shared such that whichever group needs more protection will get more protection, whichever group needs special arrangement will get such arrangements. Power sharing is not just about, oh, I have 50% of it and you have 50% of it and it's like veto power. No, it's not like that. Okay, that's how constitutions are made. That's how when the drafting committee made constitution, it thought about all of these things, and now they have given special protection to the groups that require protection, that require power. Okay, yes, it is. Sri Lanka's story is completely different from Belgium. Exactly. And we saw that both of them, because their approach to power sharing was completely different, their result was also very different. Here in Belgium, the groups, they lived kind of peacefully. There was no civil war because they chose to respect each other. Whereas in Sri Lanka, because one group tried to exert dominance over the other, it created civil war, right? All right, great. Next, we have already seen these things. Let's just quickly brush up these. Then I'll give you two prelims practice questions that you will answer here, and then one mains practice question that you will answer in the comment section. You'll give me the framework in the comment section after the class is over. Now, some of you usually start answering in the chat box. The chat box goes away once the class is over. I am not able to see the answers here. I won't be able to see them. In the comment section, however, they stay. So I can see the answers in the comment section later as well. All right. So we have already seen this. Let's just quickly brush up. It says that there are two major reasons for power sharing. First is prudential reason, meaning practical reason, which is it reduces social conflict. It reduces, like we just saw in the case of Belgium. It prevents violence and instability. It protects national unity, benefits both majority and minority community. We have already seen all these things in the case of Belgium. We also saw, because power sharing was not there in case of Sri Lanka, all these things were problematic. There were social conflict, there were violence, there was instability, there was lack of national unity, and it only benefited majority, not the minorities, right? The second reason that we have is okay, it is repeated, I guess. The second reason we have is moral reason, which is just because you are citizen of a country, you should have the right to participate in the decision making. Otherwise, this is not democracy. In general also, a citizen of a country should have the power to participate in the decision making. Those affected by government policies should be a part of the decision making. It's not like government is going to make policy for, let's say, women, and women are not the part of decision making, because then they would not know what kind of problems women face or what kind of problems a particular community faces if there is no one from that community in the decision making. So people who are affected by government policies should be consulted in the decision making. Participation gives everyone a stake in the governance, and which is the essence of democracy. Okay. Then we saw forms of power sharing. We saw horizontal distribution of power, vertical distribution of power. In horizontal distribution of power, we need to remember the three organs of the government. What are the three organs of the government? Three organs or three institutions of the government are legislature, executive, and judiciary, and power is distributed between them. And this is called horizontal distribution of power because they all are at the same level. No one is subordinate. Similarly, when we talk about vertical distribution of power, it is center, state, and then local government. This is vertical distribution of power. Now this is called vertical distribution because the center is the strongest, then is state, and then is local bodies, right? Or these are subordinate to the center. And this is what we discussed yesterday also when I told you that we have federal structure but with unitary bias or unitary tilt, which means whenever need be, center is going to become stronger than the states. Okay, this is vertical distribution of power. Next is power sharing among social group. We have already seen that different religious groups share power. For example, it's not like in our country or in any country, one religious group should be more important, more powerful than the other. For example, in Sri Lanka, we saw that the Buddhist community was more powerful than the rest of them because a majority people belong to Buddhist community, and that created problems. Now, when we talk about power sharing, it is among different religious groups, different linguistic groups, women, socially weaker sections of the society. So these are the example of social groups. Similarly, there will be power sharing among political parties and pressure groups also. That creates political competition. We have already seen that yesterday. That creates political competition. How is power shared in political parties? When there is coalition government, we know that a government, in order to establish itself legitimately, it needs majority, and sometimes one party does not get majority. In that case, 2 or 3 different parties come together and then they make the government. So pressure groups such as traders, industrialists, farmers, workers, these are also that ensure democracy. So they also have power in a democracy. If there is a specific interest group that whose interests are not being met, whose interests are being ignored, in that case, pressure groups come into picture, and then they influence political party to make such policies that are going to help these interest groups, that are going to help these left behind groups as well. So all these things we have already covered in yesterday's session. Yes. All right, great. Why are there less people today? It's just Monday. So this is the first question that you have to answer. Question number 1 says, which of the following best describes majoritarianism? A, rule by elected representatives according to constitutional principles. B, rule in which majority community governs according to its wishes even at the cost of minority interest. C, equal sharing of power among all social groups. Or D, decentralization of power to local governments. Which of these is correct? You have to tell me. Yes. Which of these is the one that describes majoritarianism? Yes, beta. Federalism is when states also have power, not just the center. B. Yes, most of you have said B. Great. So let's say what does B say? B says rule in which majority community governs according to its wishes even at the cost of minority interest. So everybody has answered B, and I am taking it for a fact that you have understood what exactly this is, right? Yes, you're absolutely right. The answer is option number B. Next question. This will be a good question. So here there are institutions given. For example, there is legislature, executive and judiciary, center, state, local government and coalition governments. And here there is type of power sharing that is given. For example, horizontal distribution, vertical distribution or power sharing among political parties. You have to tell me which of these pair is correct. First, let's understand this question because you get such questions in the prelims. So for example, let's say that third is right. Coalition government is power sharing among political parties. Let's say this is right. That means one is right, one pair is right. If let's say second one is also right, then two pair total is right. If say third is also right, then three pairs are right. So you have to tell me how many pairs above are correctly matched. Yes. And you also have to tell me which of them are correctly matched, not just how many, which of them, first, second or third. I will just move from the screen so that you can see the question. Yes. You've started giving answers. All three are right? All right, great. All of you have answered all of the above. So first is legislature, executive and judiciary. This is horizontal distribution. We remember that legislature, executive and judiciary, these are the three organs or three institutions of government, and they share power and they are on the same level. No one is subordinate. So this is horizontal distribution of power. Center, state and local government, that is vertical distribution we just saw. And coalition government is power sharing among political parties. That means all three pair are right. All the three pairs are correct. Absolutely right. Now you have a mains answer writing question. And this is something you will tell me a little bit right now, and then you will write the framework in the comment section later. Let's read the question together first. It says, power sharing is the very spirit of democracy. Discuss in the light of experiences of Belgium and Sri Lanka. You just tell me how would you approach this question? How would you answer this question? So you guys keep saying that we should have a live answer writing practice session. Consider it like that. You just have to tell me how you would approach it, and then you will write your answers in the comment section, which I will read, and I'll tell you tomorrow which one of you has written it correctly, who could have done better and all that. And don't be scared to write your answers. Nobody is judging you. This is a judgment-free area. Okay? So please tell me, how would you approach this question? What is this question about? The first point is always to figure out what is the keyword. What exactly is the question talking about? Your introduction starts with that. So that's a hint that I've given you. Define democracy. Okay. What about the rest of you? What would you write? What would you write in the framework? Okay, first let's start with this. What would you write in the introduction? Let's start there. Because every time I just simply give you the framework, and then I feel like if I give you the framework, then you will not be able to think yourself. And after a point, you'll get used to the spoon feeding. So let's start there. What would you describe? Some people are saying we will describe democracy. Some are saying we'll describe power sharing. Very good, Prabhanu. Prabhanu, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Yes. See, let's read this part first. It says power sharing is the very spirit of democracy. So what is it talking about? What is important? Are they talking about democracy? Are they talking about power sharing? For example, I'll give you a question. The introduction, although it's a question from English, but let's see, because you have to understand the language in order to understand what you have to write in the answers, right? This is introduction. The introduction of these policies have made our lives easier. Let's say this is the statement that is there in front of you. and you have to find out what will you write, has or have. Tell me, what would you write here? What would be the correct verb that you'll use here? Has or have? The question is, the introduction of these policies has or have made our lives easier. Pardon my language, pardon my handwriting. I don't know why it's looking really bad. Anyway, yes, what would you write? Have. Yes. Why? Why would you write have? Why would you write have? Now I want the answers also. You said you'll write have. Now my question is, why would you write have? Most of you have said have and some of you have said has. Now see, here is the important part. What usually happens in such cases, when we see the introduction of these policies, we think that policies is the main subject. And because it is plural, according to it, we use have, because have is plural, right? But that's wrong. The actual subject here is introduction. And how would you identify it? There is a trick to it, but of course, I'm not going to teach you English here. But let's understand what it is trying to say. It is saying that the introduction of the policies has or have made our lives easier. What has made the life easier? The policy or their introduction? What has made the life easier here? The policies or the introduction of these policies? The introduction, of course, right? So that means the correct subject, the main subject here is introduction. We are talking about introduction, and because that is singular, I will use has here. Now the same thing applies in this question also. See, this is why you need to understand the basic English so that you understand what is actually asked in the question. If you don't understand the question itself, how would you write an answer? So here in this question, the first line says, power sharing is the very spirit of democracy. So are they talking about democracy, or they're saying that power sharing is important? They're talking about power sharing. So in the introduction, would you write about democracy or would you write about power sharing? You're going to write about power sharing, because that is the keyword here. That is what has been talked about. If you write simply about democracy, the examiner will say the student has not even understood the question. They have just started writing. Understood? So here we will talk about power sharing first. So introduction will include power sharing, and along with it, you can give example of Belgium and Sri Lanka. Of course, you will not go in depth here in the introduction, but you will write something from here because they have specifically asked you to write from the experiences of Belgium and Sri Lanka. Is it clear? Yes, that's how you approach a question. So you can write, you can define what is power sharing, right? And then you can write that how Belgium and Sri Lanka use different approaches to solve the problem, or use different approaches in power sharing. And then in the body, you'll talk about them. So in the introduction, I've just introduced the idea to show that I'm still in the question. I told you the introduction has to be from question, and similarly, the conclusion also has to be from question. It has to be a complete circle. All right, great. Now they have said, okay, what would you write in the body? We are done with the introduction. What would you write in the body? Now let's talk about body. Now in the body, we don't have much to write. We know for a fact that all the keywords that we have used in the introduction, we are going to just focus on that and discuss them in the body. For example, in the introduction, I talked about power sharing and the fact that Belgium and Sri Lanka use different approaches. So now I'll explain what approaches were used by Belgium, right, and Sri Lanka, because you have been asked about both in the question. So in the body, you will simply write what kind of approach they have used. For example, in Belgium, there was equal representation for Dutch and French speaking people, right? So you'll write a little bit about it. No, because you don't have to give the answer here, beta. You just have to give me the framework. Answer you will write in the comment section, because that will take some time to figure out who has made the mistake where, right? So that is going to take some time. Similarly, you will also explain Sri Lanka's approach. Now don't start writing everything that there was, the composition was very complex and because of which there was problems. You won't write all of these. We are just talking about the approach they use towards power sharing. We don't have to explain the entire story. So we will skip to the part where we have studied what approach they used, right? For example, in Sri Lanka, they declared that there was only one official language. So whatever they did, their approach only you have to mention here, not the entire story. Now, what will you write next? Is there going to be a third part in the body before conclusion? What are you going to write next? Outcome of power sharing? You can write why it is important, because we have given two examples where one, it was shared, second, where it wasn't shared. So now you will mention why it is important. And why will I mention that? Because in the first line itself, it says power sharing is the very spirit of democracy. That means they are saying that power sharing is important. So now that you have given two examples, one where it was shared and one it was not shared, now you'll tell why it is important depending on the examples that we have just seen, right? You'll write why is it important, and then finally you'll conclude. That should be your entire framework. Now that we know the framework, I expect all of you to answer in the comment section, not in the chat box here in the live chat, because those messages just vanish after the class. Take your time, think about it, write in your notebook, or if you have any practice notebook, whatever you have, write there first. Then copy it or just type it in the comment section. Okay? Do you have any questions? So that's how you actually approach answer writing. Initially, it's going to take some time because there are few steps involved in the answer writing. So initially it takes time, but once you start practicing it on a daily basis, or at least 3 or 4 questions in a week, that should also suffice, at least in the beginning. So just do that and you'll realize you have made tremendous improvement in answer writing by the end of the month. You're not supposed to write your conclusions here, write it in the comment section later. So if you have no questions, do you have any questions related to this chapter? If you have no questions, we'll sum up this session now. Yes. Practice makes perfect. Actually, I don't think practice makes perfect. I think practice with awareness makes perfect. Because you can be practicing the same mistake over and over again, and you'll be practicing that mistake. It will not make your answer perfect. So there has to be an awareness. There has to be somebody who will correct you. Okay, this is where you're making mistake. Don't make this mistake the next time. Right practice makes perfect. We have to read. No, see, NCERTs are there just so that you can build the base, the foundation. Don't spend too much time in NCERT. You have studied maybe you have studied new NCERTs, that is enough. You build your bases are covered, your foundation is covered. Now move on to the advanced books. All right. So I think, ma'am, what about the challenges of power sharing? Should we write? No. Okay. Okay. Very good question. You tell me, would you write the challenges of power sharing here? The question simply talks about the fact that power sharing is very important for democracy. It is not talking about whether it is challenging or not. So I'm not going to introduce another point here. If there was any word written which said critically analyze or criticize, critical word was here, then I would have written challenges also. As long as discuss is given, we focus only on whatever is asked in the question. If question insinuated that there were some implications, we would have written implications. If question said that power sharing is the very spirit of democracy, but it can be challenging sometimes, and then the directive word was discussed, then I would have written challenges. Right now, I don't have to. Yes. All right. So that's it for today's question. Thank you so much for joining in. I really hope that you write the answer in the comment section of this practice question, mains practice question. And until next time, which is tomorrow, take care.